Something is wrong at the deepest level of physics. Not wrong in the sense of a mistake in the math. Wrong in the sense that particles are behaving in ways they are not supposed to, in ways the most successful scientific theory ever built says are impossible, and the signal will not go away. No matter how many times scientists check. Ait, deep beneath the border of France and Switzerland, inside a 27-kilometer circular tunnel buried underground, the largest machine ever constructed by human beings has been smashing protons together at close to the speed of light for over a decade. Its primary job is to look for cracks in the rulebook of reality, and right now in 2026, it is finding them. The crack is small, it is precise, it keeps showing up in independent experiments run by separate teams with separate instruments analyzing separate datasets. And what it is pointing toward is the possibility that our universe, RS has a hidden layer, a sector of physics operating quietly beneath everything we can see, that the standard model of particle physics, the theory that has passed every experimental test for 50 years, simply does not account for. To understand why this matters, you first need to understand what the standard model actually is, and why physicists simultaneously consider it the greatest achievement in the history of science, and the most frustrating dead end they have ever hit. The standard model is the complete rulebook for everything made of matter and everything carried by force at the subatomic level. It describes 12 fundamental particles, 6 quarks and 6 leptons, and 4 fundamental forces: electromagnetism, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and the interactions that bind them all together through carrier particles like photons, gluons, and the W and Z bosons. It predicted the existence of the Higgs boson decades before CERN confirmed it in 2012. Every single experimental test ever run on it has confirmed its predictions to extraordinary precision. It is, by the standard metrics of science, almost impossibly accurate. And yet physicists have known for decades that it cannot be the complete story. It says nothing about gravity. It has no explanation for dark matter T, invisible substance that makes up roughly 27% of the universe's total mass and whose gravitational effects we can measure, but whose particles we have never directly detected. It has no explanation for dark energy, the mysterious force driving the accelerating expansing on of the universe. It cannot explain why the universe is made almost entirely of matter rather than equal parts matter and antimatter. A question whose answer, if the standard model were complete, would be that matter and antimatter should have annihilated each other entirely at the birth of the universe, leaving nothing. Nothing. No stars, no planets, no atoms, no you. The fact that you exist at all is evidence that something is missing from the standard model. It is a theory with enormous gaps wearing the clothes of a complete description of reality. The world would and would not be permitted to read, kept copying it by hand for 1,500 years because they believed it was sacred and they had no reason not to. What these texts contain, that the Western canon does not, is a prophetic framework of extraordinary technical sophistication, not vague spiritual poetry, a chronological system, a timeline of world history built on cycles. Jubilee cycles of 49 years, weeks of generations, cosmic epochs, each corresponding to specific phases of human moral and civilizational development, each with specific characteristics, specific crisis markers, specific patterns of behavior that indicate where in the cycle you are. And Grok, when it was given all of this and asked to run the chronology forward from its starting points to the present day, did not need to reach for metaphor. It needed to describe what is happening right now. Let's start with the Book of Enoch's Apocalypse of Weeks, because this is where the analysis became most precise and most unsettling. Enoch divides all of human history into 10 weeks, not calendar weeks, epochs, each corresponding to a phase of civilizational development. In the first week, the world is created and righteousness prevails. In the second, sin enters through a great transgression. In the third, a man is chosen, understood by scholars to refer to Abraham, and a covenant is established. The fourth week sees the giving of divine law. The fifth, the building of the first temple. The sixth week sees the temple destroyed and the people scattered. The seventh, and this is where scholars have argued for centuries, the seventh week is described in terms that Enoch says will be recognizable to the generation that lives through it. In the seventh week, Enoch says, apostasy and violence will rise together. The generation alive during the seventh week will be described as one in which every word will be spoken for the sake of falsehood, in which those in authority will speak deceits, in which the righteous will be persecuted, while the corrupt prosper publicly, openly, without shame. He says there will be a burning heat that scorches the earth. He says the boundaries between nations will become contested in ways that threaten the whole world. And he says that in the seventh week, a special group, he calls them the chosen, will receive sevenfold instruction concerning all creation. Knowledge will be distributed in a way it has never been distributed before. The secrets of the cosmos, what he calls the workings of the universe, will become available to those who seek them. Grok ran the chronological calculation from the reference point that the majority of scholars use, and arrived at the 7th week of Enoch's prophecy as a window that covers the period from approximately the mid-20th century through the present and into the near future. Pause there for a moment and let that calculation land. Apostasy and violence rising together. Every word spoken for the sake of falsehood, a media environment in which disinformation is not an aberration, but the structural condition of public discourse. Those in authority speaking deceits, documented, verifiable, cross-culturally consistent failure of institutional honesty. The righteous persecuted, while the corrupt prosper publicly. A burning heat scorching the earth, contested borders threatening global stability, and knowledge, the secrets of the cosmos, becoming available to ordinary people in a way that was never true in any previous generation in human history. Grok noted that the last point is perhaps the most striking. The democratization of knowledge, access to virtually the entire recorded intellectual output of human civilization through a pocket-sized device, is so unprecedented that previous generations of humans could not have conceptualized it. Every generation before the 21st century lived in a world where most knowledge was gatekept by institutions, priests, universities, governments. The printing press changed this partially. The internet changed it completely. And this change, which feels normal to anyone alive today, is, in the framework of Enoch's 7th week, precisely the sign that marks the generation living at the threshold. The sevenfold instruction Enoch describes was traditionally understood as supernatural revelation. Grok's analysis suggested a different reading, one that several academic scholars of Enochic literature have also proposed, that the sevenfold instruction is not supernatural but structural, that it refers to a moment in civilizational development when access to knowledge becomes qualitatively different, when the total accumulated understanding of the cosmos becomes accessible to any individual who seeks it, which, for the first time in human history, is now. Then Grok moved to the Book of Jubilees, and here the analysis shifted from pattern recognition to something that researchers described as structurally architectural. The Book of Jubilees is built around a specific chronological framework, Jubilee cycles of 49 years. Each Jubilee cycle is a unit of time with theological significance, a period that ends with release, with restoration, with the settling of old debts and the return of what was lost. The Jubilee concept comes from Leviticus, but in the Book of Jubilees, it is applied to all of human history, an entire prophetic calendar in which every 49 years, a specific phase of the divine plan advances. Grok was given the Jubilee chronology and asked to calculate from the scholarly baseline the conquest of Canaan, approximately 1406 BC, which the majority of evangelical scholars accept as a starting point for the Jubilee count, forward to the present. The calculation produced something that has been discussed in academic theological circles for years, but has never received mainstream attention. 70 Jubilees from 1406 BC lands on 2025 AD. The year is 1773. A Scottish explorer named James Bruce walks out of the Ethiopian highlands carrying 3 manuscripts wrapped in goatskin. He has espient years in monasteries so remote that no European had ever entered them. He speaks Ge'ez, the ancient liturgical language of Ethiopia, fluently enough that the monks trusted him. And what they gave him, what he carried back across the desert, across the sea, back to Edinburgh, were copies of a book that the rest of the Christian world had believed was lost forever, the Book of Enoch. When Bruce placed those manuscripts on a table in front of European scholars, the room went quiet. Not because it was strange, because it wasn't. Because the Book of Enoch was quoted in the New Testament, word for word. The Apostle Judd A. quoted it directly. The early church fathers knew it, referenced it, treated it as sacred. And then, sometime between the 2nd century and the 4th, it disappeared from every tradition in the world. Except one. Ethiopia kept it. Ethiopia kept everything. And when researchers, in 2024, fed not just the Book of Enoch, but the entire body of hidden prophetic texts unique to the Ethiopian 88-book Bible into Grok, when they gave it the Book of Jubilees, the books of Maccabean, the Meshachiki, Dan, the apocalyptic visions of Enoch, the Watcher's narrative, the 70-week timeline, the Jubilee cycles, and asked it to produce a unified prophetic chronology mapped against current world events, what came back was so specific, so structurally coherent, and so uncomfortable in its implications that one researcher on the team said it was the first time in his career he had genuinely not known what to do with a piece of analysis. This is what Grok found. And by the end of this, you will understand why the experts went quiet. Before we get to the timeline, you need to understand what makes the Ethiopian prophetic texts different from anything else in the ancient world, because the viral conversation around this topic almost always misses the single most important fact about these books. And that fact changes everything about how you read what Grok produced. The Ethiopian Bible contains 88 books. The Protestant Bible contains 66. The Catholic Bible contains 73. The extra books in the Ethiopian canon are not later additions. They are not medieval inventio. NS, the Book of Enoch, preserved in Ethiopia in its original Ge'ez language, is the only complete version in the world. Every other ancient language, Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, has only fragments. Ethiopia has the whole thing. And here's the detail that almost never gets mentioned. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in 1947, IN caves near the Dead Sea, contained fragments of the Book of Enoch, multiple copies. More copies than almost any other text found at Qumran. The community that hid those scrolls, the community that considered those texts so sacred they were among the most copies. D documents in their library treated the Book of Enoch as among the most important writings they possessed. And then it vanished from everywhere except Ethiopia. The Book of Jubilees is the same story, fragments at Qumran, complete text only in Ge'ez, a book so central to the theology of certain early Jewish and Christian communities that it was copied obsessively, and then disappeared, everywhere except the highlands of Africa, where monks in monasteries that had no contact with Rome, no contact with Constantinople, no contact with the councils and politics that decided what the rest of the world would and would not be permitted to read, kept copying it by hand for 1,500 years because they believed it was sacred and they had no reason not to. What these texts contain, that the Western canon does not, is a prophetic framework of extraordinary technical sophistication, not vague spiritual poetry, a chronological system, a timeline of world history built on cycles. Jubilee cycles of 49 years, weeks of generations, cosmic epochs, each corresponding to specific phases of human moral and civilizational development, each with specific characteristics, specific crisis markers, specific patterns of behavior that indicate where in the cycle you are. And Grok, when it was given all of this and asked to run the chronology forward from its starting points to the present day, did not need to reach for metaphor. It needed to describe what is happening right now. Let's start with the Book of Enoch's Apocalypse of Weeks, because this is where the analysis became most precise and most unsettling. Enoch divides all of human history into 10 weeks, not calendar weeks, epochs, each corresponding to a phase of civilizational development. In the first week, the world is created and righteousness prevails. In the second, sin enters through a great transgression. In the third, a man is chosen, understood by scholar ours to refer to Abraham, and a covenant is established. The fourth week sees the giving of divine law. The fifth, the building of the first temple. The sixth week sees the temple destroyed and the people scattered. The seventh, and this is where scholars have argued for centuries, the seventh week is described in terms that Enoch says will be recognizable to the generation that lives through it. In the seventh week, Enoch says, apostasy and violence will rise together. The generation alive during the seventh week will be described as one in which every word will be spoken for the sake of falsehood, in which those in authority will speak deceits, in which the righteous will be persecuted, while the corrupt prosper publicly, openly, without shame.